Upgrades. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review brought to you from the Tribeca Film Festival. This film here is called Group Therapy, and here's a quick synopsis. A witty exploration of mental health challenges through relatable conversations, striking a balance between depth and levity. And this is directed by Berkeley, and it stars Neil Patrick Harris, Mike Birbiglia, that's going to be hard to say, Nicole, Byer, Gary Goffman, London Hughes, Tig, and Akasha. I think I said Akasha right. Okay. This is a documentary, and it's Neil Patrick Harris talking in a very group therapy session with an audience to 6 comedians as they talk about comedy and mental health. That's the best way I could put this out there. This film is one of the most powerful films I've seen in the last 2 years or so. Like, just to have this discussion, and these are real life people talking about real life issues, and just how comedy at times helps them deal with their real life issues, or in a reverse sense, how it helped them deal with some of the stigmatisms that they suffer in real life. And that was go to either London and Nicole of being black, and some of the things that they went through being black, or in Nicole's case also being the more heavier set woman and having to deal with certain stereotypes based off of that, or down to Akasha having a conversation about mental health from the perspective of her mother being mentally ill, and her having to deal with that growing up, being raised by her grandmother, a much older woman, and then trying to come out of her shell from that standpoint. What this film does an amazing job at, and this film's also produced by Kevin Hart's Heartbeat production company. It gives a glimpse into what group therapy looks like for people. And I think that is the most interesting point that you could take away from this film, is that while it is extremely funny at times, but it's humor masking a lot of hurt, but it's still funny when you're watching it. But it's also in a setting just to let you understand how it is to be around like-minded people and having discussions about mental health, and how even if you're comfortable, how uncomfortable that conversation can be with other people. And that's what leads this to be a magnificent film here. It's I don't want to single out any of the comics. Granted, it is one particular comic which is Tig, who's known for the heartbreak of her story, because that led to her big break. But then you hear her talk about that more in detail, and the feelings that evolves around it, down to a special that she did where she wanted to become a mom and getting horrible news about that on camera, and those feelings along with it. And as she's talking and as she's making jokes, you can still hear the hurt behind everything. That's very interesting to me. Down to London Hughes talking about how at one point in time her face was painted with cocoa powder by a makeup artist because they didn't have any makeup that could match her skin. And then how does that feel? And then her being from London, overseas, I'll say London, maybe London, I'm not 100% sure now that I think about it. But her being from overseas, and just how their perspective from comedy was built off of Americans. And she brings up, and they play a beautiful clip of Whoopi Goldberg here to show like just how the world changed, and how her view of comedy is based off of so many different people in America. Like these are stories that need to be told, down to Gary's deadly, heartbreaking story about all the mental health challenges that he went through, and how he used comedy to pull himself out of it, but also how he went through electric shock therapy to pull himself out of it. Like it's so many different stories that if you follow any of these comics, you've heard these stories already. So none of it's new information. You've heard, if you follow these comics, you've heard these stories already. But in this setting, it comes across as more powerful. As Neil Patrick Harris is the person who's moderating this whole discussion. And in turn, he's throwing the questions out to them. And at times, they're just answering the questions based off of their emotions and their feelings. Again, that's why it gives you this real feel of being in a group therapy session and trying to work out whatever you deem at that moment your mess is that needs to be worked out with people who understand the plight that you're going through because they went through it in some way or another. And that's what we get from these 6 brilliant comedians who, on their own, any one of them can do this type of special themselves and it'd be great. But here, in a more condensed format of you needing to hear 6 different voices and 6 different perspectives, I think that makes it more relatable. Because it's kind of hard to relate to one person who may have this extremely tragic story, which all of them kind of do. And you're saying, hey, I never went through this, so I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can understand the plight of that person. But when you're getting these 6 stories, and while all of them deal on one level or another with a form of mental health, they're all completely different. And because they're all completely different, it makes an audience member who's watching this, it feels more relatable to you when you're watching it. Because maybe if you didn't latch on to one of them, you'd latch on to the other one, and then that's the person who you may face those challenges. And it's to hear them talking about it helps to give you a different perspective on how you can possibly deal with it, or that you're not the only person that's dealing with it. That's what makes this film so good, so great, along with it being amazing for a serious film about mental health and a group therapy session, because you have nothing but comics here, and Neil Patrick Harris, who gladly says in film he is not a comic, but with these 6 comics here, it's still constant jokes being thrown at you. And uncomfortable jokes at times, because it's jokes that mask a lot of hurt, but they're jokes nonetheless, and they're thrown at you, and it becomes an entertaining watch. Like, this is one of the most entertaining documentaries I've seen in a while, in the sense that it keeps you laughing throughout, but boy, it comes with a poignant message that is pushing to you to let you know just how important it is to make sure you take care of your mental health, because that's what all of these great comedians had to learn to do. It helped push them out of whatever situation that they're in, or it's currently helping them work through any situation that they're in. Like, that is the gold of group therapy, which, again, for a documentary, which I don't watch a lot of, I was just intrigued that that would be the way it would be set up, as in a group therapy session with all of these people who you know all of their stories, and you're wondering how can you blend this together, and it's done brilliantly. Neil Berkeley, who's the director here, I think he does an amazing job at understanding when it's important to focus on one person, when it's important to focus on 2 people, when it's important to play certain things from their special, so you literally understand more, just in case you're new to one of these comedians and you don't know the plight that they've gone through, or sometimes just home videos to show how their life is when they're dealing with their situation, or maybe when they got pulled out of their situation, and how everything works, or certain tragedies that led them to believe they needed to get out of those situations. Like, all of that is absolutely great, and it becomes a must-watch project because of that. It definitely feels like while you're laughing, you're also healing at the same time, which is literally the primary gift of comedy, because who wants to laugh without a little bit of pain in there with it? But group therapy, brought to you by the Tribeca Film Festival. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give group therapy a 9 out of 10. This is a great project. I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of watching it. Again, even though I knew the stories of these comics, just the format that is shown, it made it all feel fresh and new and more relatable as you see them in a room full of people and they're not necessarily doing stand-up and they're having to talk about some of the toughest issues they've had. And even with the film beginning with one of the comedians saying they used to talk to someone who told them, don't make comedy a therapy session. Like, the audience needs to be able to relate to you. They don't need to be the people you offload to. And recently in comedy, with a lot of big comics, we've seen that change, where this therapy comedy, in a way, that's going on, of these comics venting to the audience their issues and having the audience give them feedback to work through their issues, is a new fad. And we're hearing these older comics come in and saying, "Why, like, this is something that we were told never to do." And then we're introduced to this group therapy session where that's exactly what they're doing, which I also think is a brilliant move, to put an audience in there to actually listen to all of this, where it's just not the 6 comics with Neil Patrick Harris talking through their issues. Again, it's an amazing setup. It's a beautiful film. Check it out. I don't know if this film has any distribution. I know, again, it's produced by Kevin Hart's production company, and Kevin Hart has distribution everywhere humanly possible. So clearly you're going to be able to see this somewhere. But if you're in Tribeca and you have opportunity, check it out. Let us know what you think. This has been another JVS movie review brought to you from the Tribeca Film Festival. Peace, people.